The GLC class from Mercedes-Benz has seen a lot of action lately. It was only recently that it was given a facelift. Then Mercedes-Benz India decided to bring in the GLC Coupe in a more accessible non-AMG avatar. And now we have the GLC electrified, sort of. Now, at the 2018 Auto Expo, we were presented with the EQC concept, which essentially established this sophisticated design that the EQ range from Mercedes-Benz were set to follow. It also established the fact that the EQ is the electrified range of variants at Mercedes-Benz. And this EQC is first of many to come. There will be an electrified A-Class called the EQA, then there'll be the electrified S-Class called the EQS. That makes me wonder, what happens to the electrified C-Class sedan? Because this crossover has clearly called dibs on the EQC nameplate. Well, that's frankly for Stuttgart to figure out. What I'm here for is to find out what an electrified Mercedes-Benz feels like. For starters, it attracts plenty of attention on the road, so it's easily one of the most exclusive Mercedes-Benz cars in the brand's portfolio right now. And the big star on the grille will instantly make it recognizable as a Mercedes-Benz. The large size of the headlamp assembly or the stacked up arrangement of the lighting elements, its interplay with the grille, that big black applique connecting the two headlamps, all of this might look a bit quirky on the face of this car, but it achieves one very important goal. It helps the EQC fit in with the rest of the cars while also making it stand out without looking too outlandish. The daytime running lamps that run across the length of the grille may seem overdone to some, but they complement a similar layout and design that you see for the tail lights. The sleek lighting elements at the rear look quite classy and prevent the hatch from appearing too bulbous. But a rounded off design typical to all new cars from Mercedes-Benz is seen on the EQC too. Now for the EQC, you could choose a white, a dark grey or this light grey that you see here. No flashy colors for this car, which is a bit of a downer, so you can always have the EQC only in an elegant color. But if you want to make a more green statement to the onlookers, you can always choose these 20-inch alloys in this snowflake design but with these blue accents to show the world that you've got yourself an electrified vehicle. For Mercedes-Benz nerds, the EQC follows a new model nomenclature that starts with N, and this car is classified as the N293. To put things into perspective, compared to the X253, or better known as the GLC class, the EQC is 105mm longer, 6mm narrower and 14mm lower despite sharing an identical wheelbase. The EQC will also cast a unique silhouette, and there's no way it can be mistaken for a GLC. Furthermore, this electric car only shares about 15% of its components with the C-Class platform, most of which is evident in the cabin. The component sharing also means that should the EQC have a phenomenal demand in India, it can be assembled locally at the Mercedes-Benz plant in India on the same line as the C-Class and the GLC. There's a fairly good knee room and excellent foot space. Also, you don't sit too high up despite the batteries in the floor. Even the headroom is quite good. It's nicely scooped out in the roof, so there is a sense of airiness in here. Of course, you don't get a panoramic roof, so that's a bit of a downer, and all the upholstery is dark in color, but you still feel nice and airy in here. You also get a nice big large aperture for the windows. Visibility outside of the windows is quite nice too. You also get a 3-zone climate control at the rear, so it adds to the comfort in the rear seat. And talking of comfort, well, I like the seats. I like the angle of the backrest. I like the posture that it gives you. The cushioning, slightly on the firmer side, but I love this upholstery. I think it looks quite nice and feels quite nice to the touch as well. So in terms of the rear seat experience, this is very much like the GLC, but things are very different at the front. It's very unlikely that the EQC will be the first Mercedes-Benz for any of the owners, and will ideally be the second or the third three-pointed star in the garage. Such buyers will see a lot of familiar equipment and hardware inside the cabin. This flowing tunnel console is something that we love with Mercedes-Benz cars, and that continues with the EQC as well. However, you get a slightly different design, rather significantly different design for the AC vents. You don't get those circular vents which are now common on most new Mercedes-Benz cars. You get a completely different design for these. They also get this bronze treatment. It's a treatment that is similar to the stitching that you see here or the piping that you see all around. It nicely complements this denim blue trimming that you see all inside the cabin. I think it looks quite nice, looks quite fresh. There's a vibe of sustainable materials in here without compromising at all on the premium touch, feel and look of this car. What further differentiates the cabin of the EQC from the GLC is the layout of the dashboard, more particularly the layout of the infotainment and the instrumentation. You get this twin screen setup, something very similar to what we've seen on more premium cars from Mercedes-Benz, but this is smaller in size, of course. And also the housing that is used for it is very similar to what we've seen on the new GLS, so that's another plus point on the premium factor. Now, the MBUX infotainment system, we've already been impressed by it, we love it, but in this car you also get this new EQ menu, of course for the EQC, where you get different EQ specific menus and functions like the charging options. It will give you the consumption, it will also show you this energy flow on this really cool animation, so you can see which of the motors is working. If both the motors are working, it will also tell you the status of the battery, if power is being drawn from it or is being fed back into it, and it's a nice cool animation. So this is again something that comes in handy when you want to plan things, how you want to drive, when you want to charge, all those things. At the same time, the Hey Mercedes digital assistant,
How may I help you?
always attentive. Well, nothing for now, thank you so much. But what it can also do for you in the EQC is help you find charging stations, so that again helps with the planability. Likewise, the Mercedes Me app gets more connected functions over and above the GLC, telling you the charge status, for example, and helping planability. While it also benefits from other functions like geofencing, vehicle tracking, and the valet mode that we recently saw on a similarly priced GLS. I even like the key. Take a closer look. It's nice gloss white and chrome. Looks very different from the regular keys that we've seen from Mercedes-Benz, which are black and chrome sometimes. This feels really nice, feels different. Anyway, so it comes to life in a typical electric manner. No sound, it only tells you here the vehicle is ready to drive. You get the same kind of gear selector that you get on most other Mercedes-Benz cars, so that's not a new learning curve either. Push the lever into drive and you set off in a nice and silent manner. Like most EVs, the loudest thing inside the cabin is the AC vents. Now, Mercedes-Benz tells us that in normal driving conditions, when you're driving on tarmac where you don't have a lot of rolling sound of the tires coming in like you would get on concrete surfaces, the cabin would be between 64 to 68 decibels. I don't remember the exact number, which is why I'm saying between 64 to 68 decibels is what they've told us. And that's very silent, that's spookishly silent. And well, it somehow goes with the luxurious vibe that you expect from a Mercedes-Benz cabin. Like I said, in the rear seat, you don't sit very high despite there being batteries in the floor. But at the same time, it doesn't feel very car-like or very hatchback-like. You get a nice commanding view of the road. You can easily spot the cows, the calves, the potholes, everything. You can nicely dodge through all of that. But then again, while this does a fairly good job at tackling the bad roads that India has to throw at it, the ground clearance is not what you would really expect of an SUV or a crossover. This is a more soft-roader version of the soft-roader GLC, if you know what I mean. You have to be a little careful when you're driving over speed breakers. I have to be careful about that speed breaker that you see there. Let me hope that it doesn't scrape. I have to go in a cross manner. Now, since these are shooting locations that we usually exploit and explore, we were recently here with the GT 4-door, and the same kind of caution that I had to exercise with the GT 4-door, I'm sort of having to do that even with the GLC, especially on speed breakers, because the bottom end is scraping quite often, and that's down to the low ground clearance of this car. That's exactly what I mean. That hurt. Not the back, but here. Blame the low ground clearance on the liquid-cooled high-voltage battery pack. It is of 80 kilowatt capacity and is made up of 384 lithium-ion cells in parallel and series connection. Mercedes-Benz provides a basic charger with the EQC as standard, and before you buy the EQC, a team will physically visit your premises to check compatibility for a compact wall-mounted medium-pace charger. The EQC places asynchronous motors on the front and the rear axle for a twin-motor setup capable of an electric all-wheel drive and an output of 408 PS and 700 Newton meters. The EQC claims a 0 to 100 sprint time of 5.1 seconds. Now that's fairly quick for a car of this size, this weight. Now at the same time, You have two electric motors like we mentioned, one on the front axle, the other on the rear axle. But predominantly this car is front wheel driven. It's only when you want to have that spirited drive, it's only when you are going for it, or it's only when the powertrain detects load on it and needs more power, needs more torque, that is when the rear motor is again summoned. At the same time, if it also detects slip, then for safety reasons, the rear motor is summoned, that 4MATIC comes into play, and then it sort of evades the whole slip and gives you better grip. Now, this system isn't quite discreet though. You know, when you put your foot down or when you know that you need that additional power, you get that momentary pause and then you suddenly get this surge of power. So you realize that the rear motor has kicked in. Be gentle with the throttle and the EQC will get off the mark or cruise in an elegant manner typical to a luxury car. On the topic of the caution that I asked you to exercise when it comes to speed breakers or deep potholes, you'll also notice that the ride is on the firmer side. It also feels like the suspension just doesn't have enough travel that you expect from a crossover or an SUV, especially one that wears the Mercedes-Benz logo on the grille. You expect it to be nice and soft. So yeah, there is that initial bit of roll at turn-in, so you know it's still a soft setup, but it just doesn't feel that the suspension has enough give in it, has enough travel in it to tackle a series of bad roads, a series of ruts or joints. That is where it starts skipping and hopping and starts feeling like a stiffly set up European car, though it isn't. This isn't a car meant to be treated like a taut and sporty SUV. It is a roomy and practical EV meant to ferry you in luxury and guilt-free, and the batteries that enable it make all their mass evident when entering the bend. As far as the visibility goes, well, it's excellent. You get good cornering visibility as well. You have the Burmester speakers in the A-pillar, but it still doesn't really intrude too much into your peripheral vision. You get good cornering visibility because of the way the windshield extends all the way. And I like the overall visibility that you get in the front seats. It feels nice and airy as well. And in some occasions, it also feels quite sporty. Now, I've often talked about the single pedal operation and the different levels of deceleration or recuperation that electric vehicles offer. And we've seen something on the Kona which is now also in the EQC. That's these paddle shifters. It's these paddle shifters that control the various levels of recuperation that this EQC has to offer. So you have the auto or the D mode, where it feels very natural. It feels like the natural engine braking of a petrol or a diesel GLC to put into comparison. And then you have the D- or the D-, modes. So both are essentially giving you a sharper deceleration, sharper engine braking in that sense. So it is ideally suited for winding roads. Let me come to that in a bit. You also have the D+ mode, which is like a gliding or a coasting mode. Now, once you understand how to use these modes to your advantage, you will be able to drive this car in a single pedal operation, and that will help you maximize efficiency. Let me give you an example. If you are on the highway, you're better off in the D+ mode, where you are coasting and gliding. There is enough motivation from the powertrain to keep you going, and you're essentially controlling the power, you're essentially controlling the acceleration, you're essentially controlling the glide with the brake pedal. But if you're on a downhill section, if you're on a downhill winding road, then depending on your comfort level, how comfortable you are with the sharpness of the deceleration, you could choose between D- and D-. And when you do that, you will then be controlling the power, the speed, and the overall velocity of the vehicle purely using the accelerator pedal, because the moment you go off it or start reducing the accelerator input, there is that sharp deceleration force that you will face or that you will experience. So then this is what the whole single pedal operation is what I'm talking about. Once you understand what kind of single pedal operation you can use for the driving conditions that you are in, whether it's a throttle controlled single pedal operation or a brake pedal controlled single pedal operation, once you get used to it, once you understand which mode to use to your advantage, you will be able to maximize the range on this. There are two advantages of this. One, you reduce the effect of range anxiety, and two, once you understand how this works the way you want, it feels a lot more rewarding to drive this car. We began the journey with an indicated range of 335 kilometers on a full charge. Drove for around 89 kilometers through highways, crowded streets and some winding roads, and even a very steep uphill climb. But making right use of the recuperation, We concluded the first part of the journey with 77% juice still remaining and an indicated range of 283 kilometers still to go. A quick top-up charge at lunch brought the batteries to about 84%, after which we shot some more, drove the car for an 80 kilometers on sport mode and encountered a traffic jam right after for half an hour, only to conclude our 278 kilometer journey with 35% charge still remaining and an indicated range of about 107 kilometers. Of course, the numbers could change rapidly with changing conditions or driving patterns, but it's a good indication of how you can use the driving modes to your advantage. After this 12-hour long drive with the EQC, I would say that a real-world range of 300 to 350 kilometers is definitely achievable. Now, with cars like the Kona and then the ZS EV and the Nexon that followed it, there is now a slightly wider spectrum of price brackets that are available within the EV range. And now the EQC will essentially push it further. It will be extending that spectrum further. It will be the most luxurious EV you can buy if that is what you like. But if you still have any questions about the running costs, about does it make sense buying an EQC, Mercedes-Benz has this nifty little app called the EQ Ready. I think it's a very nice app. So what it essentially does is it will, with your permission, track your driving patterns. It will track how many breaks you take or how many times you come to a stop on your regular commutes. What is your weekly commute like, or what is the weekly pattern like for driving? For how long is the car parked? All of those things. And then it will essentially do the math and tell you that if you had an EQC instead, what is the kind of economics numbers that you're looking at? What kind of charging options do you have? What kind of planability can you have if you had an EQC instead of a petrol or a diesel engine vehicle that you're already using? So that essentially does the math for you. I think it's a nice nifty little tool for you to understand if an electric vehicle like the EQC makes any sense for you over and above a petrol or a diesel vehicle. As seems to be the norm now, Mercedes-Benz too is offering an 8-year warranty on the battery pack. That's peace of mind. Furthermore, they are also giving you the residual value of the car at the time of purchase, which essentially means that if you sign up for it, they will sort of give you a guarantee on the resale value of the car, which means that you only have to finance the remainder of the amount, and that should make buying the EQC a lot more accessible and easier. So now with the EQ program up and running for Mercedes-Benz and more vehicles expected to be added to the portfolio very soon, Mercedes-Benz has this vision for 2030 that 50% of its global sales need to come from all electric vehicles, and Mercedes-Benz India is in line with that strategy. So that means that this EQC won't be one of those one-time CBO imports which will be sold in limited quantities and then forgotten over time. Instead, Mercedes-Benz India is promising that they will invest in the infrastructure as well. That's one common question that we always get, and this is Mercedes-Benz at least trying to address their end of the business. So what they mean by that is they have been speaking to customers, they want to monitor patterns, they want to monitor driving patterns, continue speaking to their customers and identify highway corridors within the country which are going to be popular corridors, and then start implementing various charging solutions along the way. So that essentially should answer the classic question that most of us have: will my EV go road tripping? Will it support my long distance road tripping goals and ideas and plans? So to address that concern, Mercedes-Benz India will themselves start investing in charging solutions, which I think is a very good move. It is very encouraging to see car makers willing to take the steps to improve the EV infrastructure in India instead of just waiting for things to happen. For a low-volume manufacturer like Mercedes-Benz India to take up this step, it is certainly commendable, and it opens the door for others to follow suit. There's no doubt that despite being the most important chapter for Mercedes-Benz since 1886, the EQC is still a very conservative step into the EV space. But it strikes the right balance between sustainability and class, and at the moment, it is the most luxurious electric car that you can put your money on.